Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Zola Ayanda Kuzwayo, and we're here to celebrate the life of Ubaba Khehla Mthembu. He was Babu Khehla to me, and I know a lot of people bebembiza Mthembu, abanye bekubra K. I think he was fondly known as Ubra K. And we're here to celebrate and continue the celebration of his life. For most of us, we woke up to the horror on the 7th of July that he has passed on and that he had succumbed to the COVID-19 virus. We've been under siege as a world, and South Africa as well, not unique to this particular virus. And it's taken a lot of people away from us, and we keep losing people. So the request is still for us to stay safe and to take care of ourselves. But we are here to celebrate the life of Babu Khehla Mthembu. He contributed to a lot of what we find ourselves enjoying today. I, for one, remember him coming home to my parents, and he was always such a fun-loving person. He came across very friendly. He showed a lot of empathy and compassion for his people, the Black people. And being in the movement, I think it was always an important principle for them to show Ubuntu. This was not something that was in some motivational card. This was something that they lived, and they contributed a lot to South Africa as it is today. And I appreciate these initiatives that actually give agency to some of the unsung heroes and people that have been known to have contributed so much, but very little of what they've contributed has been spoken about. And it's whispered in certain sectors of the community, but South Africa as a whole doesn't get to hear about their contribution. Ubaba Khehla was very active in the leadership of and the formation of BCM, Black Consciousness Movement. Ubaba Khehla was active as a young man in his 20s. For some of us in our 20s, we were not looking at social issues. We were not looking at justice issues that are going to contribute not only to our own livelihoods and comforts, but also to those of other people. We're only looking at going to school, having a career, and all of these privileges are privileges that, of course, Abu Babu Khehla contributed to, and we get to enjoy it. So Babu Khehla's earliest leadership roles with BCM distinguished him as one that is, one, conscientious, second, that is not scared of facing an injustice head on, even when his life is under threat. He continued to contribute to a lot of the formations of literature structures that gave education, because at the end of the day, Black consciousness as a movement was always based on the ethos that education and the freedom of the Black people needs to be at their pace and their terms, and the aspirations that they have need to be articulated by themselves, as opposed to white liberals, taking our story and telling it as if it's their own. So the program has been sent out to a lot of us, and we've seen it. And I just would like to thank all the speakers and the panelists that have agreed to come on to celebrate the life of Baba Khehla Mthembu and to speak specifically on his contributions to the Black consciousness movement and to South Africa as a whole, and the freedoms that we today enjoy. We've got those that will speak of his leadership roles in the BCM. We've got those that are going to speak of him as a student in terms of his contribution to the student movements today and as a student then, when he was a student. We have heartfelt contributions also, open tributes that will be shared in this program with everybody. And then we'll be closing after that. But I would like to say that if you stay on, it would be appreciated. I think there's a lot that we can learn from those that have gone before us, number one. And number two, there's a lot that we can learn from the life of Babu Khehla himself. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the senior BCM leaderships, Babu Pandelani Nefalovodwe and Babu Thabo Ndabeni. All the speakers are going to have 10 minutes allocated to them. And this will be, of course, the program might change with connectivity challenges. Let's just note that it's not always possible. Hopefully it will hold out and everybody will have the opportunity to be able to give their tributes to Babu Khehla in this program. But with connectivity issues, somebody else might come in. So don't be surprised if it's not me anymore, but hopefully I'll be here for the rest of the program. And then also there are some changes in the program with regards to some of the speakers that we had communicated. If those changes happen, we'll let you know as the audience, and you can join us in the celebration of Babu Khehla. So I'd like to hand over now to Ubabu Pandelani Nefalavodwe to start speaking on the senior BCM leaderships that Ubabu Khehla was engaged in, and his memory, his fond memories of Babu Khehla Mthembu. Babu Nefalavodwe.
Thank you, and also greetings to those that are listening. And also, I want to, on this platform, send my condolences to the family, both families, the Mthembu family and the Mkabela family. Now, this is very important for me because I was introduced to Khehla Mthembu by the other family that I've mentioned. When I was released from prison, and then in 1983, I was recruited to come to Joburg. I'm a rural person. Way back, I'm a person who come from near the border with Zimbabwe. And I was recruited to come to Joburg by a friend of Khehla and a comrade of Khehla called Litsatsi Musala. And I was recruited to come and lead a trade union that had just been formed. And really, unbeknown to me, Litsatsi Musala then took me to Muletsane. And he then introduced me to a family which was Comrade Ishmukabela and Sibongile. That family had just started at Muletsane, and Litsatsi then made arrangements without really discussing much with me to say I would be staying with that family in Joburg. And that's how I came to be part of that family for a short time. When I got into the house, I then found yet another person who was still a little bit young, called Pulemunama, who was also staying at that very family. And Pulemunama then also introduced me to a family which was very near, just a family which was more or less just 1 or 2 houses from where we were staying, which was the family of Khotso Siatlolo. And later, Ishmael then decided to arrange for my accommodation at yet another very important family of Khotos Lengane. So I was really accepted in Joburg by activists at the Mkavelas, and then nearby there was Khoto Siatlolo's family. Khoto was not there because he had been in exile. And then later I was taken to a family which I stayed with for a long time in Joburg of Khoto Lengane. Now, through that connection, that's when I came to meet Khehla Mthembu and then visit his family from time to time with those kinds of comrades who were very close to him. I became a very close friend of Litsatsi Musala, who was just a friend and a comrade to Khehla Mthembu. So that's the connection that I started having with Khehla Mthembu through some kind of umbilical cord that was there. But not only that, Khehla Mthembu was a very committed BC comrade, very committed, and a comrade who, if you want to give any kind of work, he would always accept. And he came across to me as a very dedicated comrade who would do anything, whether it is fundraising or whether it is something that you want to be done, he would do that for you. But not only that, Khehla Mthembu was a man who could create any facility, particularly business types of facilities. So for the comrades and also for the movement. Khehla Mthembu then decided at some stage to be involved in the insurance company. I think it was called African Life at that stage. But when he was at African Life, he recruited a number of comrades to work at African Life, which shows you that Khehla Mthembu was a very strategic comrade he did, because he didn't just say, I've got some work here and that work would be for me alone. He then recruited some of the comrades that you may remember. He recruited a comrade that came from prison as well, who Comrade Sidibe, and also he's a very important comrade and a friend, Vusis Tole, to work for that insurance company. And so through that connection also, we used to visit his office and interact with what he was doing. And he wanted to broaden the activities of African Life through the other comrades that were there. But Khehla was not very happy with African Life, being Khehla himself. He always believed in doing things for himself and for his community and comrades. He left African Life and he left some of those comrades still working there. And he formed something called Offshore. And that was a brokerage, as far as I can remember. He formed that Offshore. And after forming that Offshore, he came to my office at BAMCU, at the union which I used to be Secretary General. And he then asked me to say no. He would like me also to recruit workers to be part and part of that brokerage. And in our discussions, there was a comrade called Mngomezulu Tebuko. This Mngomezulu was working with me at Bamku, and for one reason or the other, he felt that he could also join him in order to do the recruitment work for offshore. And we agreed that that would be a very good thing to do. And that was arranged, and things started to work that way. So we became part and parcel of promoting his offshore. But Khehla was not only promoting offshore during that time. He was also promoting the activities of the exiles, our old exile fellows who needed people from the union who could join them abroad so that we could engage in military activities. So Khehla was also part and parcel of people who wanted that recruitment to be done so that we can strengthen our exile wing so that activities of a military nature could take place. And indeed, the comrade I'm talking about, Mngomezulu, ended up in exile, became part of what is referred to as the BCMA, and part of what is referred to today also as the military wing of the BCMA Azanda. So that's the connection that we had. And this Litsatsi Musala, who recruited me from the rural area, also became very active in the affairs of the BCMA and Azanda. And we all just got involved in our different forms. But Khehla being Khehla, as we were working together with Khehla, there was a time when there was an idea within Azapo that the activities of forming businesses and facilities that organizations that will assist Black people should be extended to Black businesses. At that time, Khehla was working hand in hand with Jabu Mabuza. I remember very well. In order, as an Azapo person, because at that stage, Azapo was looking at extending activities into the Black community, but those activities that time was to be focused on businesses and the other businesses that were in the township, to bring them together, form an umbrella organization that could take the struggle, the economic struggle further. And together with Jabu Mabuza and Khehla became very much involved in the activities of forming FEBCOS. Maybe many people don't know FEBCOS. He was very much involved in forming FEBCOS with Jabu Mabuza. So that was very important for us because
Yes.
The Black Consciousness Movement strategy was to permeate all sectors of our community. And the business sector was very important. People talk about economic empowerment. We were not talking about empowerment. We were talking about economic control, not empowerment, because we had come to the conclusion that how can a majority be empowered by a minority? And that's what Khehla did. He then went to the business communities in order to form FEBCOS, which will then spearhead the businesses of people. You must know Jabu Mabuza had come from the taxi ranks. And
Yes.
that's, we wanted to mobilize everybody into a functional organization. And FEBCOS even today is still alive, is still functional. So this is where,
thank you so much. I just want to have the opportunity to give the other speakers an opportunity to be able
Also,
to
I've
speak
finished
about
already my
Babukela.
turn.
Yes, you have. But I mean, we're
There's so
so
many.
grateful because you've got such a repository of information with regards to Babukela's dedication to the Black consciousness movement. Not only that, but his passion for his own people and, progressing them and moving them forward. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming through.
You have met other organization he formed, but that's okay. I'll talk another.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I mean, we're
All
grateful
right.
that
No,
we're
I'm
able
not.
to celebrate.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you very
we're
much. I'm okay.
celebrating his life.
Yeah.
We're definitely celebrating his life. Thank you. I'd like to now give the opportunity to Babu Thabo to also talk about Babu Kehla's contribution to one, the Black consciousness movement, its leadership, and also to the Black people at large. And yes, I want to request that we stick within the time. And I know there's a lot that we can say about Ubaba, but let's try. And I'm just going to request that we try and keep it within the 10 minutes that has been allocated for all of us. So, Bob Tabo, I'd like you to come on board. Thank you so much, Bob Neff.
Thank you.
Can I come in?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob Tabo. Thank you so much. If you can share your experience of the man known as Upra K, fondly known as Upra K, I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Ayanda. Firstly, would like to thank you and the organizers of this particular event to remember Khehla Mthembu, but also to extend my condolences to the family. I was quite fortunate to be with him. I think I didn't know that it was going to be the last time. On the 15th of July, we met at the French ambassador's residence when Bongi was being knighted by the French government. Without knowing, there are pictures that he took which will always remain dear to me. I come to the picture. In 1979, we come out of a trial, the Soweto 11 trial. And the trial ended I think it was on the 11th of May that year. And immediately, just as we left the trial, I end up in the hands of Ishmael Mkabela, Diani Mabasa, Khehla, and the rest of the BCM guys.
Family.
Yes. At that point, the project was to launch the Azanian People's Organization. Khehla was in the mix. As we were consulting, because I became part of the people that went throughout the country to mobilize and ensure that the idea of forming a ZAPO was accepted. Khehla was also part of it. As we were doing that, we came across quite a few elderly people who were saying, but you guys, you want to be leaders of a political organization and you're so young. At that point, when we were caucusing issues of leadership, Khehla's name was already in the head. But
yes,
the way Khehla was selfless, when that decision was arrived at that guys were too young, we must look for somebody elderly to be the face of Azapo, and Curtis Nkondo was chosen. Khehla never took that as a slight on him or his status being reduced. He just took the next responsibility issues available, and we pursued. When Curtis was at some point removed out of office, Khehla took the reins and gracefully led the organization. Now, Khehla was very selfless. he takes the organization at a point when there were lots of challenges. There was an attempt to frustrate the establishment of the Black Consciousness movement after the burnings in 77. So money disappeared. For you to run an organization, you need money. Money disappeared. Resources disappeared. The only resource which was available was the Black Consciousness family itself. Khehla, George woke up, Letsatsi Mosala, George was working at Wits University, Letsatsi Mosala was working at CNA. These individuals shared whatever money they were getting from wherever they were working and made it available to the other comrades that were that were part of the organization. So to that extent, Khehla also made whatever resources, he made his house available to us. Now, that is a sign of people who at the time rose to the occasion, recognized the historical time that the movement must be, the flag of the movement must be hoisted up, and they made themselves available physically and with whatever resource that was available. Khehla was very daring. I recall one of the programs during his presidency, it was the cultural boycott. The success of the cultural boycott depended on us being on the ground. What it means is that we used to spend hours at the shebins selling our message, arguing with drunk individuals, sometimes drinking with them, but all the time selling the message that we are not supposed to support international artists coming into the country. We did all these things. Khehla did not assume the position that he's the president, therefore he will not soil his hands. I recall one instance, myself, Khehla, and George Wokop went to Tembisa to go and address a community gathering. It was in the evening, the hall was, Rabasutu Hall was packed. We spoke about cultural boycott, we spoke about local issues, and then thereafter we were very happy that the meeting went well. We drove home. I dropped Khehla at his house. I dropped George Wokop at his house also, and I went home. As I was dropping Khehla, was dropping George Wokop, it turns out that the cops were also following us, because as I was dropping them, they were being picked up. As I parked the car was driving at my home, I closed the gate, I get into the house, there were knocks all over. Around 2 a.m., the entire leadership of the executive of Azapo, we meet at Protea security branch offices. Now, and the reason why we were detained is what I'm trying to say is that Khehla didn't see himself to be above the rest, and therefore would not soil his hands. Whatever that had to be done, he did himself. We ended up in detention. I recall we had a very strange relationship with the security branch, because they didn't treat us like ordinary people. They treated us as leaders of Black people. And George Wokop never stopped reminding them. I think Khehla, wherever he is, will remember that he was respected by even the security branch that were responsible for his detention. At one stage, one of the security guys came and was trying to address Khehla, and George said to him, "Don't call him Khehla, call him President Mthembu." And the guys changed and called him President Mthembu. That's the one side of Khehla. And the other special feature about him was his ability to identify individuals that had a ability to perform certain functions. Pule Monama in the last memorial mentioned that Khehla invited him and said to him, I would want you to lead the formation of Azasa. Vusis Tole, who was Khehla's colleague, was part of the guys who founded Black Management Forum, again at Khehla's instigation. In 1986, 1985, Johannesburg was celebrating its 100 years. Khehla quietly came to me, said to me, Ndabeni, we need to do something about this thing. Let's form a campaign against the centenary celebrations. We founded what was called the Community Support Committee. And through Khehla, we were able to have in our committee Babu, the principal of Orlando High, Baba Motlana, who was also part of the committee. I'm just saying, there's a magnet. We had our ability through Khehla to be able to mix and bring people together towards a common cause.
Yes. Thank you so much, Babu Thabo. Thank you so much, Babu Thabo. And what I'm gathering is that, you know, both Wena, Babu Thabo, and Babu Nef, you alluded to his dedication to his people, number one, his commitment, and how when he's given a task, it was not something that he took it upon himself to give it a position or anything like that. It was a task, he was executing it, and it was contributing to the whole organization.
That's true.
And the last thing was, even as a young man, when he was to be, you know, his leadership skills were such that even when he didn't have the presidency at the time, and everybody else recognized him as the president, not because of a position, you know, or a name tag that has been given to you, but because of what you do in terms of engaging with the structures of the movement, number one, and in terms of executing on the mandate of the movement.
That's true.
Thank you so much, Babu Thabo. I really appreciate the fact that you came to give tribute to such a gentle giant, really, a gentle giant. And that's how I have experienced him as well. Thank you so much. So
Thanks,
I'd like us to talk more and to explore his contribution to youth, particularly if Ayanda Kota is on StreamYard, to talk and to give tribute to his what we've learned as the youth from Ubabu Khehla with regards to the movement itself, number one, and how we spend our youth, you know, in social issues and in educating the rest of the youth that is in the movement, and keeping the Black consciousness ethos alive in young people, number one, and also in our social structures that we engage with. So I'm changing the program a little bit, if you give me the liberty to do so. But I really would like to, you know, see and to experience Babu Khehla through Ayanda with regards to that part of his life. Ayanda, I'll hand over to you. Ayanda? Can you hear me? Ayanda, are you okay? Are you there?
Very much, Comrade Ayanda.
It seems we are having internet problems there.
Yes, I can hear you.
Perhaps what we can do is to also share some of the influences that Babu Khehla has with regards to how he gave of himself in the different structures.
Yes,
and Ayanda, are you back?
Yes,
Ayanda,
I can hear you.
Are you
absolutely
back?
I'm back.
Okay. Can you unmute yourself so that we can hear you? Because we can see you, but we just can't hear you. Unmute yourself. No, unmute. It shows
I've done
muted
that.
for now. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
If you unmute yourself, we can hear you. That's great. That's great. Continue. Continue.
All right. Thank you very much, Comrade Ayanda.
You can continue.
All right. The last time I met Comrade Khehla Mthembu was at the founding conference of the Black Consciousness Movement United. That was the last time we had an interaction. As someone who grew up as an Azanian student, immense wing time, and Azapo was led by comrades that society perceived them to be thinkers. So speaking about him, my interactions with him, he embodied an ethical life. He embodied what it is to be a human. It is through the lives of Khehla Mthembu that helped what it is to be human and the significance and the importance of our relationship with one another. Interaction with him and with the Black Consciousness movement change the way movement, that politics. That politics, our politics must be the politics that our politics must be the politics that infuses hope. Our politics must be the politics of honesty, we must always be human. I think that is very important.
Apologies that we couldn't hear Ayanda Kota. We'll try him again a little later.
I think that is very
but in the
significant.
meantime, I'd want to read
because
an
what we
extract
see
from
today in our
the Black
society
Consciousness Movement paper that
and
was
the
written in
world.
memory of Babu Khehla with regards to Babu Khehla himself. And it speaks, I want to read in particular his contribution as a young man. It reads here that Mthembu is one of the earliest leaders of the Black Consciousness Movement who served the BCM with distinction. He held a number of leadership positions, including that of president of the Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO. In his leadership roles in AZAPO, he contributed to the founding of some of its most important formations, such as its exile wing, the BCMA, the military wing, Azanla, and its high school student wing, Azazm. Two of the things that distinguished Mthembu from many of his generation is that he assumed the leadership of the National Liberation Movement when he was in his 20s, and did so at a time when detention without trial, torture, kidnapping, and disappearances and political violence was rampant, and something he was also a victim of. However, Mthembu's contribution was not just limited to his political activism. He also made important contributions to the development of Black businesses in South Africa and was involved in many youth and community development initiatives. So this was a giant, and he contributed a lot to some of the freedoms that we take for granted today. And I would like to introduce Usis J. Kizimba to also speak about Brakey, because they had a special relationship. And, you know, sometimes you want people that have experienced the man in when he was happy, when he was sad, when he was full of energy, and, you know, a mover and a shaker. And I think Usis Jackie has experienced him like that. So I want Usis Jackie.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Yaya.
How are you?
You guys, I'm okay, and I hope everyone else is okay and safe.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you quite clearly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm going to hand over to you, Usis Jackie, and ask you to give the tribute to Khehla, Brakey, and speak a little bit about how you experience the man, you know, as we celebrate his life. Over to you.
You know, it becomes very painful to be speaking about Papa Khehla when he's not here, you know. But I strongly believe that in remembering his spirit, I honor him in more than many ways. We haven't lost a person, Khehla the person, but we have gained an ancestor, we've gained a guardian angel. But I just want to go back to when I was still a teenager. On the 18th of May, 1986, our house got bombed in Alex, and we ended up homeless. Like I was literally on the streets of Soweto. But Papa Khehla, when we arrived in Soweto, we had stayed at St. Hilda's for about 3 weeks. And after that, then they had to share us. It was Papa Khehla, Papa Ish, I think, no. Papa Khehla, Ntate Habedi, Talai, and a number of them. I can't remember. There was this lady called Ospet, Lena Nadulaku Selection Park. But at the time that we were shared, I got lucky to have been chosen by him, and I stayed at his house. He had just bought a new house in Selection Park at that time. It simply shows he was not selfish, you know, and we got to eat what we didn't have at St. Hilda's. Because remember, at St. Hilda's, there was no comfort. It was just a church, and we were sleeping on the benches of the church. And in his house, we got to be warm. I will go a little bit again back to the days of Lecton House. I always brag to people and say that in the Black Consciousness Movement, we don't have demigods. You would enter that office in Lecton House on the 4th floor, if I could still remember quite well, and still sip sweet 80 in the same glass that Papa Khehla as a president drank from. That's just how in the Black consciousness, there was no, this one is a president, this one is just rank and file. And I don't know the bad side of him, by the way. I got to, after all that fracas, go to Mahikeng, where I worked for Bob Broadcasting. And coming back home, I called him and I said to him, I'm back home from Mahikeng and I need a job. And he said to me, by that time, he was at Pepsi. And he said to me, Mam Changani, you are more than welcome. At any given time, you can come and work here. That's just how selfish he was. And all the time when I met him in Nzikilungwana High, we went to welcome. He had some provision in his car where he was traveling le Mama Moja, le Mama Pelutuli. And he called me to his car. He had this sports car, beautiful, beautiful Mercedes, two-seater. And I said, Kikopaudula Khanyan, you know, he had let me get into the car and said, when you'll always be a teenager for as long as I am alive. This is the man whom I so much respected, whom in his hands I was very safe. My parents could entrust me, entrust him with my safety and my welfare. His sister, Mamsbo, loves me to bits. Whenever I am going through something, these are the people that I'm able to call. Bo Bona, Bo Abutumbulelo, Butalai, you know, these are the people that to this day, when I look at them, I am still a teenager. And we don't grow for as long as the Tagatsari parents, they are still alive. I felt safe in his presence. And I'm still saying to this day, I feel that he's still with me. His spirit is here. He might not have been my biological father, but he was my political father in the home where everybody else looked out for each other. I wish that we could go back to that time. Back to the time when you could just park at a comrade's place and not feel threatened and not feel or anything bad that could happen to you. We were reprimanded as kids. Who were in there, Mam Rueda Halim, Mam Asha. In them, to this day, even though we are in our 50s, we are still kids and we love them. Papa Khehla, yatlela ikurula. Till we meet again, we will always respect you and love you. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you so much, Sis Jackie. I really appreciate it. It's unfortunate I can't hear you from where I am, but I'm getting a lot of messages that are confirming, you know, the tribute that you've just given to Ubabu Khehla, and I really want to say thank you for that. The next person that we're going to ask to come on is Mukhadi Pela, to talk about Ubabu Khehla as well. And to give tribute to the man himself and how he experienced him. Not only as a BCM member, but also as a business person, because it would appear like Ubabu Nef had already alluded that when he left African Bank, he actually started his own company, which shows innovation, you know, in a time where trade unions were just trade unions, and nobody else was starting black businesses and stuff like that. Ubabu Khehla took it upon himself to start something and be innovative in starting something that would give employment to his people and to, you know, go into the structure of the economy and be active. So we'll ask Ubabu Mukhadi to come in, Mukhadi Pela, and to speak about Ubabu Khehla, his contribution as the man himself and as a business and innovator within his black community, to provide and to see the gaps that are there and to provide for his people in that manner. Dr. Mukhadi, are you on?
Yes, definitely. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. We just can't see you. Can you turn your camera on?
It was on initially. I don't know if I need to. I hope. Is it making a difference?
No, not yet. But we're hearing you, so you can continue to speak because when we get it right, you'll be able to come on and be on the camera. But we don't see you yet. But you can go ahead and speak about Khehla Mthembu. It's okay, Babu Mkhadi. You can continue to speak whilst you're working your camera and you're getting it to get on.
Okay. No, thanks a lot.
There you are. We can see you now.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay, thanks.
We can see you
Okay,
now.
thanks a million. That was a comment from Nyamego earlier on that was quite visible. The lighting and everything is okay. I'm a journalist by training. Yes, I'm a journalist by training, and therefore I learned a lot from observing Comrade Khehla, how his leadership skills, everything, and again. Okay, I need to, like everybody else, to start conveying my condolences to the family and to really identify myself with everything that Comrade Neff, Comrade Thabo, Ayanda, and many other people have said about Comrade Khehla. One of the things I could say is that from my own observation as a journalist way back, I cut my teeth in journalism way back in the 1980s, and I said, when I first saw Comrade Khehla and, from his writings, from the speeches, I just said to myself, indeed, he belonged to this rare craft of a breed of leaders. Leaders are those who can see into the future. And I said to myself, the difference between Comrade Khehla and many other people was that he saw tomorrow, while many of us were dreaming about it. The other important aspect that I noticed about Comrade Khehla was to make many of us, we ordinary people, to feel special in his presence. You would not be suppressed by his greatness. In fact, you would feel, you would grow in his presence. And having noticed his involvement in business and having formed and inspired the formation of many business organizations, I said to myself, this man could have easily turned his name into currency. But, he was principled to the core. As, St. Paul says, he kept his faith. And, he has taught many of us and many people not to sell our souls to these soulless people. Just the other day, as I was going through many of these tributes that have been going around, I saw a tribute, a message to Comrade Musala, where I was told, he says, ahead of Comrade Khehla's death, he was enveloped by this feeling of sadness, this melancholy. And I remember my comment was that, St. Augustine, one of my most favorite saints, St. Augustine of Hippo, that's in North Africa, said many of the things that we do not understand while we are still alive, we'll probably only understand once we've crossed the river. You would understand why is it that you were enveloped by this feeling of sadness ahead of Comrade Khehla's death. I think the other, having listened to many of these comments, many of these tributes that Comrade Khehla really deserves, one says to us as Black people, we must begin to take ourselves seriously. We need, it's a tragedy that to this day we do not have a book, an autobiography on Comrade Khehla and the like. So this should inspire us to document our own history. As Comrade Neff was speaking, you had to cut him short because, he was actually being moved by the Spirit to say even more. The same with Comrade Thabo. They have so much more to say about Comrade Khehla. Now, people like Comrade Khehla should be subjects for thesis. You know, students, whether we are talking about master's, doctoral students, should be writing stories, books about characters like Comrade Khehla, because they have so much to offer for this country, the world, and you know, the entire universe. So all one can say is that he has lived his life to the full. Indeed, one either loved him passionately or hated him intensely, and his death due to this ravaging virus, it's just a mere reminder to all of us about the fragility of life, that we're not made of stone. And, you know, again, it really, again, reminds all of us to start to continue taking the virus seriously. And, you know, one can only say at this moment, you know, we empathize with his family, we pray for his family, we weep with the entire family of the Black Consciousness Movement. It has lost a giant. He was one in a million. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ntate Mokgadi. And it's so true, he was a gentle giant. I remember when I was growing up, Ubaba Khehla, and I like what you said with regards to him making you feel special. You know, when you're a child, especially in the Black Consciousness Movement, your houses become, you know, everybody comes in and goes, basically. It's a community zone, you know, of the Black Consciousness family. So it's not only his family, his biological family that's grieving, it's the BCM movement family that's grieving as well. Because for us, Ubaba Khehla always made us feel special. You know, there are those uncles, Mabefiga, they're very serious, you know, they're there to talk about serious things, and children must not be seen. But he always took the time to give a smile, you know? He always took the time to share a joke or two. And can you imagine? I mean, this person is much older than you, but he takes the time to make you feel special. So honestly, that was the truth about the men. Sometimes we say things about people that are not necessarily true just because they are gone. But as far as Khehla Mthembu is concerned, that particular aspect of his personality lives on, because everybody whose lives he touched can actually attest to that. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking.
Okay, thanks a lot, my sister.
So, yes. So Ntate Huitimang has walked a journey. A long journey. Ntate Khehla. These were all abo baba bami. This is who, you know, you want to look at as a character of a man. People that actually took the bull by its horn literally, and their lives were not important to them. Everybody else's life and an injustice was not something that they were going to tolerate. They were going to go, you know, to the hilt in making sure that nobody experiences injustice. And Tate Huitimang Museki has walked this journey with Ubaba Khehla. And I'd like you to share a little bit about the man and give tribute in this celebration as we remember him as Ubaba Khehla Mthembu, Brakey. Tate Huitimang, over to you.
Thank you very much, my baby. Thank you so much. I actually feel particularly proud that you guys have grown up to be the persons that you are. And it actually shows us that our efforts were not in vain, that when the seed was planted, it fell on good soil. I must acknowledge and thank everyone that organized this and that continued to talk about this old friend of mine. We stopped being friends, we became brothers, we became cousins. I would love to premise what I'm going to say by reading a few lines, and they go something like, who are we? Because we are born and grow into adulthood. Who are we? We are born only human, but grow even into stature. We carve a niche in the birth tablet of life. We become giants in our own spaces. We see above everyone's head. Our view is far and wide. Confetti is thrown on our heads as we are celebrated. However, when Big Ben calls, we must answer. Time has come and we must depart. Totally unplanned for, we leave the earth. We know where we come from, but we know not where we're going. Yet go we must. Celebrate our lives and allow us to stay human. Celebrate our being and despise all manner of evil. Celebrate our achievements and allow us to bow our heads in humility. I've been listening today, people talk since the passing on of Khehla, and people talk about his ability to mix with everybody at every level. That is a sign of humility. I am supposed to talk about Khehla the man. Somebody said, Mujanku said on Sunday, it is not an easy thing to achieve in 10 minutes. Yeah. So when I skim only over things, please bear with me because there is just so much that can be said about this man.
About the man.
But the important part, I want to look today at Khehla the activist. But premise that by saying we have again arrived at a moment of sadness, of pain, and despair. We have lost an individual of significance again. When death strikes this close, it creates a lump in one's throat and make it difficult for you to swallow even your own saliva. You know, guys spoke about the selfless Khehla. Now I want to indicate that that selflessness was not just picked on the ground. Khehla embraced the religion of Christianity as a young person. We've known each other with Khehla Ayanda 50 years ago. I was counting the other day. So if I do the calculation, he was probably only 17 when we met and he had just lost his mother. I've seen this man grow. As a young man, he was a young, courageous, and brave man. He was willing to stake all and take on the world. He was part of a group during the struggle that did not seek to go to exile. Exile was not an option. And the reason was, otherwise, how will the tree of liberation grow should our blood be spilled and we die in foreign land? And they found it necessary to say inside. And I say, and I'm going to use the word minions and say, he became part of the minions that stayed in this land and stayed right inside the belly of the beast of the oppressive machinery of apartheid. But bit by bit, they were cutting the entrails of this beast piece by piece. And pardon me, but in continuing to do this, I'll suggest that in small pieces they created a very serious situation of flatulence and dysentery for the beast. And it is these efforts that people have spoken about of gathering our people together in small groups, whether they were young or older. These are the efforts that actually pushed the enemy to want to negotiate and change the situation. Need I say very quickly and remind people like Botabo Hore, we had men that had been in the liberation struggle for many years who said to us, Lona bashimane khalitsi maburu. Stop doing what you're doing, maburu atale fetsa. But we had characters like Khehla who would never give in, who had a specific purpose to move forward. He was one of the few individuals that was very dependable and could be trusted. He was bold, so bold as to speak and ask very uncomfortable questions. He was sufficiently audacious to make unpopular decisions and assume very unpopular stances. But importantly, I've heard Mokgadi say he taught us not to sell out. You see, he's the kind of man that loved himself, and this did not come just from the air. He embraced the Christian faith, and in the Christian faith, we're told that we need to love ourselves so that we can share the love with others. And I think I must put the issue of Black consciousness into perspective, otherwise it will hang there without any substance. The Black consciousness began with the individual that we should love ourselves. That is why people would say, I am Black and I'm proud. Because at that time, we had been made to believe that Blackness was satanic. In fact, you would get pictures that depicted the Lord Jesus Christ as a handsome Jeffrey Hunter, a white guy. And the devil was always a Black person. So it was important for him and us to come in and show that we love ourselves so much that we want to share our love with other people. Now, when you love yourself, you want to do good things for yourself, but you equally so want to take all the good things that you can do for yourself and do for others that are in need. The people that love themselves, they're the type that would actually sacrifice much in order that others should be helped. And Khehla was part of this group. If I was to go into details of what we suffered, at some point as a Black consciousness bloc, we were called the third force. And instruction was given to others that we need to be eliminated by all means necessary. And I'm stating this because I don't know how many, even within the fold, that know that Khehla was at some point going to be necklaced. In other words, burned alive with a tire around his neck. By the will of God, one happened to be near, and there were some youngsters that would say, let's rather have a two camp and take one another on, but this man is not going to be necklaced. He was saved. He loved to see Black people progress in the midst of all the business that he had running all over, fighting for the liberation of this country, organizing right around the country. He started over and above the job that he did, the small business. The small business I want to talk about of Khehla is the dry cleaning business that he had with his cousin brother, Steve. Every time up to his last days, when Khehla remembered this day and spoke about this, he would actually get very emotional and break down. Around this time, when we were targeted, for some reason, he became one of the primary targets. Some school kids had already been sent to destroy Khehla's business. I know his dry cleaners were attacked. I sat in a meeting with them when they were discussing how they were going to deal with this matter. And a decision in that meeting was made that they will go to individual schools, address them, and make the pupils understand that this was Black business. For some reason, something came into me. The next morning, I drove to Khehla's house, picked him up, and refused for him to go to BW Vilakazi Secondary School, MDN at that time. And Steve went alone. All that needed to happen is that Steve should be introduced as Mthembu. And Steve was stoned to death. And when that happened, I was in the office when I got called from Wits University that the students were celebrating that Khehla Mthembu had been killed. And I'm bringing this up so that the individuals that were part of this, that knew about this, that did not present themselves even to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Maybe someday they'll find it necessary to explain to Khehla's children, and thereby helping other children of the people that lost their lives simply because they espoused a totally different approach and philosophy towards the liberation of this country. And I'm saying this because one would pray that this must never ever happen again. Somebody said, could you guys please try and contextualize into this? Khehla loved this land so much that I can promise you now, he would have stood up to say, guys, we cannot be fighting and destroying infrastructure. We cannot burning other people's businesses. Even during the liberation struggle, one of the things that made us unpopular was the fact that we refused for infrastructure to be destroyed. Simple. Our fathers built this infrastructure. Our fathers died putting up the buildings that we had. That was as simple as that. And therefore, we are not going to do that. I see you, Ayanda, and I keep quiet, but I want to read my last lines very quickly.
No problem, Tate Khwezima.
This is dedicated to my cousin, Zalawam Umnyaman. I stand with my hand on my brow, and I see your head bowed, and you make deliberate strides, yet very slow, you're moving forward. Where I am looking from, I see doubt and reluctance in your pace. The river between us is wide, and it's got torrents, and it came behind you. The river is now raging. It separates me from you. To reach you, I must first cross this river. Could this river be a fiction of my imagination? Or was it created by fear from my weak heart? Could your deliberate slow pace be an indicative of your unwillingness or fear to undertake this journey? Ngibathe ngilindile kodwa awujeqezi uphele phambili kuhle komuntu ongenantango. Ngifuna ukuza kuwena kodwa ngiyesaba. Umfulo usiyagobhoza uyaphuphuma manje ugugula konke kusendleleni yayo. Akusindi kodwa kusindi ndwane. Zonke impawu zithi nami ngizokulandela. Kulotshiwe ukuthi lena yona ivama ukuhanjwa ngumuntu ngamunye. Idalwe kanjalo. Hamba ngane yabathembu. Yise wezingane zakho nonkululeko umangaliso. Oqiniselani, oqhakaza. Junior, olwazi, ofense nozano. Mkhokheli wabakwaziyo. Thunzi lalabo abebekuthamele. Slima sabakuthandayo, hamba mnyamani. Thank you so much.
Siyabonga. Siyabonga kakhulu. Oh, what a beautiful praise at the end, Tate Khwezima. Kubuhlungu. Kubuhlungu kulahlekelwa kwangempela umuntu owayeyilo ebe uyena kuwena. It's really sad to lose such an important person in your life. Condolences, Khomotsekgang, as your name is, Khomotsekgang ka nnete. And you know, we learn a lot and we grow in this experience, but he hasn't left us with nothing. There's a legacy that we live with, and there's a legacy that we still need to, carry forward. Thank you so much, Tate Moseki. I really appreciate your coming through and bringing tribute and giving tribute to a very good friend of yours, Ntatwa Rona.
Thank you.
There are many messages that are coming through, and there are many open tributes that are coming through. We will read them later on, but as I read them, wow, I'm humbled to have known such a person. Tate Khwezima spoke about the strength in character of a man. I don't know if I would have been able to continue fighting for people that wanted to necklace me or that celebrated at one point or the other that I was dead. But we see a man that was selfless, which seems to be a character flaw of a lot of the Black consciousness movement activists. They are selfless and their keen interest to justice is beyond themselves. They don't just think of themselves in this time, but they think of the legacy that they leave behind. They think of whatever it is that their people is experiencing and how important it is to continue that movement. And this is what is coming through in this tribute and the celebration of Ubaba Khehla. I'd like to introduce another father of mine, Ntate Pule Pule. And he will speak to Ubaba Khehla as a young man, as he knew him, because they would come home, and these were the people that we learned from. They made us feel special, they protected us, and they continued to teach us in various ways and in various forms to really celebrate our Blackness and to be proud to be African children. So Ntate Pule Pule, thank you so much for coming through.
Hey, Ayanda, how are you?
I am very
How are
well,
you?
and I'm so excited to see you. I'm very well. I'm very well, and I'm excited to see
Thank
you.
you.
Rekopana under
Yeah,
precarious and challenging
very
times.
true.
We're losing people to this virus, and yarqeta,
Yeah.
but we still have to, soldier on and continue. So I'll give it over to you, Ntate Pule, to speak to. I mean, just like Ntate Khuitsi, you knew Babu Khehla for a very long time, from the time you were young, So I'll give the platform to you to really give tribute to the man as a young man, and Halehola, until now, the relationship that you guys had and what he contributed to as a BCM activist. Over to you, Ntate Pule.
Thank you very much, Ayanda. I don't think I'm very long. Huitiman is gifted at talking for a long time. I'm just the opposite. Before you think of it, I'll be done. But thanks for the opportunity. And Tabo spoke about the fact that Khehla was selfless. So did Ebuseki. What a selfless guy. Brilliant, son of the soil. It makes me think of a little story that was once told me by a friend, that selfishness can destroy. He told me of a story of a young man whose parents had not taught him to be selfless, to the extent that this brilliant little boy failed examinations, and the teacher was surprised. What is actually happening to this boy? Because I know him to be very brilliant. On probing this, he realized that the selfishness that was instilled by the parents was so overwhelming on the character of the little boy, to the extent that even when he is supposed to answer questions posed in the test and examination, he failed. Notwithstanding the fact that he was one of the most brilliant young boys.
Ntate Pule,
On checking exactly what
we're having trouble hearing you clearly.
He had been so brilliant. It was established
Ntate Pule,
this boy, even yes.
we're having
Can you hear
trouble
me?
hearing you clearly, but you seem to be coming through right now. So let's try. Let's continue and hear.
Yeah, please warn me. Maybe it's my gadget. And
Yes.
someone is trying to warn me of the same. Jackie? The connection is poor. Okay, let me see what they do with that. Okay. So I'm told the connection is poor.
You seem to be clear now, Ntate Pule. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So
Please tell
let's
me when it's
continue.
not, so I can
Let's
attend.
continue now. No, we'll do that.
Yeah, now
We'll do that.
Yeah, I'm now saying that it was established that the little boy, having been taught how to be selfish, in answering examinations was actually saying, hey, my dad says I mustn't share this with other people. If I give the correct answer, this teacher might actually even give this to another child. So I'm not going to give this. Let me rather give a wrong answer so that my knowledge is not shared with others. That's how poisonous selfishness can be. But we are saying what characterized Khehla's character was brilliance, selflessness, son of the soil. I lived with Khehla as a young boy, all of us being young boys, and we were involved in Christian youth clubs together. In those clubs, we used to teach young people the very thing that we thought was prominent in the black people, among black people, against apartheid, against oppression. And some of them, the apartheid regime never used to understand what the youth clubs were all about, because we would teach them Christianity, would teach them liberation theology, would teach them all things that could liberate the mind. And it is for this reason that even when the challenges of missionaries in our societies were supposed to be put to another level, Khehla came out very handy. I remember one time when the concept of missionary moratorium was put up, where missionaries were to be kicked out of school. Khehla was asked, why kick out missionaries if they are just preaching the gospel? And Khehla had this to say about that if missionaries were sent by God, he would have given them the right color. Am I coming across well? It looks like. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're coming across in that.
Can you hear me?
We're hearing you.
Correct. So, yeah. So I'm basically trying to say to you that he's started with the gospel. He started with outreach on young people. We're all young, preaching the gospel, preaching the liberation struggle, and most of these young people today are leaders in their own right, and they cut their political teeth, including Khehla, in that youth movement. That youth movement was very important. Biko influenced us as time on. We joined SASM, we joined BPC later, but we were already men of their own right. I like what Biko says about blackness and black consciousness. He says it is attitude of mind and the way of life. In other words, for a person to be black person, you don't have to see the person. You must hear the person. In other words, Biko was minimizing the description based on color and maximizing the description of blackness by way of saying you need to hear the person, don't see. That is why, if up to today you want to see a person is black or black to the extent of being relevant, you don't have to look at the color, but you need to hear that person out. We have heard this young man called Khehla Mthembu. We have heard him over the years, and we established that Khehla was indeed a black person in accordance with the principle established by the Biko. We established that, this man is selfless because he's taught in the theory of black consciousness. We have, I don't want to bore people about what we did later in our life, because a lot of people have spoken that part of it. But I just want to reflect on a very painful experience where there was inter-organizational conflict in our society. And at some point, one of our friends, Khehla Mthembu, lost his brother, and there was a funeral at his place. As a result of the conflict, the inter-organizational conflict, he was attacked by people right there at the funeral. And they wanted to necklace him, they wanted to do all sorts of things. And the eloquence and articulation that Khehla had was able to liberate him from all that morass. And he was able to escape unhurt from there. Because he challenged them and they realized, no, this is not one of those that we can just attack. Listen to what he's saying, and they were divided immediately, and he walked away free. It was so dangerously, it was so bad and tense that when I got there and was told about that, I actually wept. And Sabela's mother was actually saying, Ule Wanaka, after Khehla has survived, what do you want here? Please move, because the people who wanted to kill him would definitely come anytime and kill you instead. But I said, where are they? He said, don't even ask where they are. Just leave right now. Those are the painful experiences we had as young people, particularly with the conflicts that, wrecked our society in the 1980s. But be that as it may, Khehla forged on. As I said in my text that I sent this evening in memory of Khehla Mthembu, he later on established a lot of projects that were to benefit Black society. Pepsi Cola being one of them. Elite construction company. He was involved in life insurance company. When after writing the article I have submitted this evening to our group, I sent a copy to KK Sidibe, one of the stalwarts of Black consciousness. And I said, hey, man, before I send this thing to the group, let me get your comment and say, have I correctly quoted you? And if so, if not, tell me, I'll delete it. And in return, Sidibe said, Ure, this is so good. I'm very impressed. But one thing that I would like you to add, which I did add, is that my first salary check ever in my life that I got from Robben Island and any other place, it was a check that I got after having been employed by Khehla Mthembu. And a lot of these people, and a lot of this, and please read my text because I don't want to be emotional when I talk about that. But most of these people who had no life whatsoever, who had no future, the Muntu measures of this world, after coming out from prison, the system made sure that they don't get employment, they don't have any form of income. But Khehla Mthembu was there handy and well positioned to make sure they get trained into ways of making money on investment programs and so on. That is why KK said, with his big voice, he said, Pule, the first check I got was from that guy. And it really showed me what kind of man Khehla is. And I think we can retreat and rest well in our mind to say, yeah, we have lost Khehla, but he was selfishly just saying, before I die, all the people must share the wealth of this country. And thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Malmepule, and I thank you for just, taking the time to give tribute to Babu Khehla. Tinan, you are our fathers, and we've learned so much from you guys with regards to just being conscious of our Blackness and being conscious of moving with responsibility through the social structures and the social, injustices that we experience even today. So thank you. I just would like to read an extract from your message that you wrote with regards to Babu Khehla. You say here, I wept during my conversation with KK Sidibe the other day when he said, Pule Pule, Khehla created business opportunities for me when the whole world was on me. I was from prison and I had no clue how to start my life. We were literally destroyed by a long-term incarceration on Robben Island. I owe my life to the tower. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Guga Khatebe, one of the veterans of Teen Challenge Youth Club, also called me on Sunday morning, just say, do Brabul. Immediately I heard of the passing of one of your best friends. I thought about you and other friends of Khehla, Ntabele Po, Huitimang Museki, and of course Khehla's family. Khehla's memory, he said, will remain embedded in our hearts for as long as we live. Khehla, yeah. May the good Lord give Mthembu family strength during their bereavement. And this was from you, Malmepuli. You know, there's a lot that's coming through with regards to Ubabu Khehla, and I actually want to read some more of them. The other one is from Ujoy Khatebe, and it says, in the midst of mayhem gripping parts of our country, Might Khehla has reminded us about these seminal words Steve Biko, Bantu Biko once wrote. It becomes more necessary to see the truth as it is if you realize that the only vehicle for change are these people who have lost their personality. The first step, therefore, is to make the Black man come to himself, to pump back life into his empty shell, to infuse him with pride and dignity, to remind him of his complicity in the crime of allowing himself to be misused and therefore letting evil reign supreme in the country of his birth. There's so many people that are giving tribute to Bab Khehla right now, a lot of them, and they're speaking honestly to his selflessness. One of them is Mama Maite Rachidi, and I'd like to read her heartfelt letter to Babu Khehla posthum. It says, Dear Khehla, you were my little brother, my children's big brother. You confided in me and I in you. We traversed life's path together during unsavory times. Together with others, we buried the destitute unrest casualties from our own pockets at the height of unrest in the 1980s in Soweto, in Alex, Sharpeville, and as far as Duduza. You were always hands-on, and I could always count on you for an extra pair of hands when needed, especially at catering, be it for the organization's fundraising or funerals. You had so much intellect, yet you were such a gentle and humble human being. I would always reprimand you about your wayward antics, and you'd give me that big smile and sinister laugh that would diffuse my anger. Those we love can never be more than a thought away, for as long as there's a memory, they live on in our hearts. I will miss you dearly. May your soul rest in peace and rise in glory. Maite Rachidi.
Good.
I just want to close with the last comments of the writing on the Black consciousness in memory of Babu Khehla. And that last paragraph, it touched me. It said, it is therefore no exaggeration to say that Mthembu dedicated his life to the struggle for Black dignity and did so even when he knew that his was not just risking detention, but also being killed. His name stands shoulder to shoulder with that of the giants of the BCM, such as George Wauchope, Muntu Mieza, Letsatsi Mosala, Nkosi Molala, and others, and many, many others. And I'd like to add at this point that it's not only the male species that gave birth to BCM. There were a lot of women that were in the forefront, my mother being one of them. There were a lot of women that were in the forefront of the formation, not only of the formation, but of the proliferation of the movement itself and of the structures that BCM put up. AZAPO, Azanla, BCMA, and all the youth and literature structures that, proliferated the movement itself. So he stands shoulder to shoulder with the women too. They were there in the heart of hearts as far as BCM is concerned. And Babu Khehla was always so in honoring not only youth, it was youth, it was women, it was education, it was economic freedom, as we call it today. He was always there, selflessly giving himself to the freedom fighters and to those that were keen in seeing justice in our country. He was a true son of the soil. I want to thank everyone that came through to give praise to Babu Khehla, the man, the activist, the leader, the malume, the brother, and to everybody basically that he saw as a human being and gave dignity to them and gave special praise to them and made sure that everyone is dignified in their walk on this earth. Thank you so much to everyone. And I think we're going to be closing our program here. I want to thank all the speakers. You spoke so well, and the encouragement that you gave us and the celebration in remembering Ubabu Khehla. I want to continue in saying, Dudu, Ubaba Mthembu, Nababa Mkhabela. Condolences to the family. Aninetwa, he was not only yours, he was also ours as the Black Consciousness Movement, the Children of Consciousness, and South Africa as a whole, because he contributed to so many lives beyond the movement as well. I hope we take a page from his life and we continue the struggle, even in our personal capacities, to celebrate and to remember all the lessons and the legacy that Khehla Mthembu has left us with. Thank you to all. Goodbye now.